Can virtual goats create real art? Well, there's more than one blank face in the audience, so that's okay, because I'm here to introduce you to generative art. And I think maybe in a few minutes, you'll too appreciate the power of the virtual goat. Now, generative art is the idea that machines can produce artwork. And my involvement with it started by accident a few years ago. I had a free weekend and decided I was going to make a drawing machine. Now, the type of drawing machine I wanted to make is called a polar plotter. As you can see, very simple machines. They're usually made hanging from a wall. They have two small motors at the top, and there's a pen suspended in between the two motors. And then underneath the motors are some counterweights to balance the weight of the pen. So you might imagine that as the motors move, the pen moves. So if the right-hand motor rotates counterclockwise, the pen will descend across the paper and draw a nice arc. So I built this and then added a small computer that would control the direction of the motors, and then wrote some software so that I could draw a straight line between any 2 points. The finished machine looks like this. You can see it up on the first floor. And I learned two important things doing this. First of all, I learned that I'm terrible at estimating how long a weekend project is going to take. Because like all the best DIY weekend projects, this one took well over 6 months. And the second point I learned was it was a really unsatisfying project to finish. Because after all this time and effort, I'd made something that could draw a straight line. And as more than one person very gleefully pointed out, that problem has already been solved with a ruler. So I start to think it's not about making a machine that can draw, it's about teaching a machine how to draw. And that process is generative art. So seeing as absolutely no one was impressed with my ability to draw straight lines, I start to think, what about if I could give the machine a picture and it would sketch it out? And I thought about this, and I thought about it some more, and I couldn't work out quite how to do it. It was too complicated. How do you explain that to a machine? And the project would have stayed stalled, except for the fact that I had an argument. Now, it wasn't a very big argument. It was with someone at work who told me that they'd been playing a computer game called Goat Simulator. And I said, I thought it was a joke. I said, no one's going to spend time and money making a game where you simulate being a goat. And if they did, no one's going to play it. And I was offered a bet, and I took the bet. And 2 minutes later, I was handing over a £5 note. So, to prove that the game existed, I was sent this picture. And this actually really helped me, because I started to think about the drawing machine, and the clouds of confusion cleared, and I had the light bulb eureka moment. Because looking at this picture of this slightly crazed goat flying around with a jetpack on made me think about pictures in a different way. So I start to think of a very, very simple digital image like this one. This is 13 pixels by 13 pixels. But instead of thinking of it as a picture, I imagined it as a landscape. So instead of pixels, we have fields. And in each of the fields is some food. And the amount of food depends on how dark the original pixel value was. And this is where we get to introduce the virtual goat at last. So the two things you need to know about this goat are that first of all, he's got an infinite appetite, and secondly, he's got a jetpack. So we're going to call him Billy. We take Billy and we parachute him into this landscape, and he lands in a field and he consumes all of the food. And then he moves to the next field and starts eating all the food there. And wherever he moves, we just track his progress with a black line. So he keeps moving and keeps eating, and eventually he'll reach a point where there's no food next to him. But it doesn't bother Billy. He just powers up his little goatee jetpack and he flies to the next field, the next nearest field with some food in it. And he carries on eating and he carries on eating. And you can imagine at the end of this process, all of the food will have been consumed. But what's left behind is the track that the goat moved along. And this was really interesting to me, because that track is a sketch of the original input. So I thought Billy had done a really good job here, so gave him a real challenge, a picture that's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. So that's 1,000,000 fields in goat terms, all with food in. So it's goat nirvana for Billy. So we drop him into this, and this is what happens. So this is a time-lapse video, so it's about 4 hours of footage, sped up, and we're just seeing the pen move around on a piece of paper. But really, we're just tracking this virtual goat-around. And out of all this random chaos, you do get a meaningful picture. So on the left-hand side, that input is derived from a digital photo. It's a bitmap. But the image on the right was drawn pen on paper as a drawing from this machine. So I found that really interesting. I then found that I'd spent all this time making these complicated rule sets. You could actually make very pretty, beautiful pictures with simpler rule sets. So even rules as simple as draw a triangle, shrink the triangle and rotate it and draw it again and repeat that 200 times, that can produce abstract pieces like this with these beautiful spirals in towards the center. You can create rule sets that mimic spirographs, or in this case, two spirographs joined together that create these sort of blobby, swirly shapes. Proper name is epicycloids. And even the humble times table has a place here. So in this piece, I get 600 dots and arrange them around the circumference of a circle, and then connect the dots based on a rule set just taken from the 258 times table. And I find it magical and wonderful that in these two seemingly arbitrary numbers, and just using straight lines, you can create this circular image with these curves swirling in towards the center to meet with a cardioid, which is a Greek word and a mathematical term that means heart shape. So the machine is running up on the first floor. Please go and have a look at it. The virtual goat is unleashed and doing its thing. It's drawing a picture of Alan Turing. Now, Alan Turing was honoured recently on the £50 note because of the work he did with cryptography during World War II that saved countless thousands of lives. But he also, the discoveries he made also, with his team, set the foundations of modern computer science, and that in turn has shaped the technological landscape that we all live in today. And a small part of that enables things like generative art, and a small part of that enables projects like this. So I'd like to dedicate this talk to the memory of Alan Turing. Thank you.